Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Karissa Parks here with Leadr, and we've got Craig Johnson, our special guest with Altezza Solutions.
Ooh, special guest, I like that.
Why don't you guys drop in the chat where you are calling from? Craig, tell me about the weather in Nashville today.
It is a beautiful day in Nashville, Tennessee. We're in the mid 80s, which is fantastic because it doesn't feel like death.
Oh, that's wonderful. My husband was so excited this morning. It was before the sun was up, but he's like, you have to go outside. I think it's only like 72. And here in Orlando, we got so excited. And I was like thinking through my day, and I put on a jean jacket because it felt like fall. And then I went to go check the mail over lunch, and I was like, yep, this has got to go.
Yep, that sounds about right. That sounds about right.
Goodness.
It's jacket weather in the mornings, and then, yeah, then it's hot. It's just hot.
Yep, exactly. Well, we'd love to hear where you all are from. Go ahead and drop it in here so we can chat with you. And if you click everyone, then everyone can see where you're calling from. All right. And as everyone continues to jump in, oh, it looks like we've got a couple of Dallas here to the in the panelists. So feel free to go ahead and toggle that to everyone so everyone can chat and get to know each other a little bit as we get started. And I'm going to share my screen so we can ask some other fun questions here today. All right, so Craig and I, we're going to be here talking about creating a seamless onboarding experience. We've got a few surprises up our sleeves. You and I, Craig, we have maybe a different definition of onboarding from start to finish than maybe most people. And we're going to dig into that a little bit more today. So Craig, would you mind telling us a little bit more about yourself and what operational leader means and when you come from Altezza?
Sure. I like to do things not the way that everybody else does them. And so for me, I'm in operations. I'm the director of operations for Altezza Solutions. We are a fractional sales company that helps small to mid-sized businesses with with scaling their business through sales. And so we place our employees into their business. And for me, it's much more fun to think about my role in a more holistic way. And so I call myself just an operational leader because one, that's who I want to be. And it allows me to speak into more aspects of the business overall.
Oh, that's awesome. And if we haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Karissa, and I get to serve on our partnerships team. I have served a variety of functions. I get to do these really fun conversations with some of our incredible partners like Craig, as well as just talk to many of you, our prospective and current customers, and helping you navigate how to engage and grow your team every step of the way using a software. So as we get started in the chat, I want to hear about how many days is onboarding at your company? And if you had to describe your onboarding process in one word, what would that one word be?
And please keep it clean in the chat.
Yeah, you might need to use an emoji for those single words that we're looking for. Craig, let's think about a couple different companies you've served under. What is the shortest onboarding period you've ever been a part of, and then the longest onboarding period?
Oh man. Well, I don't know that there has been. Shortest is typically not by design. Shortest is frequently you're just thrown in. And longest usually has a purpose behind it. Though we can kind of drag things out sometimes a little bit too much. So I spent a lot of time in the nonprofit world, and within that world, I served with organizations that were that had no onboarding process, and so it's just kind of like, here's your desk, good luck. And then I've served some phenomenal organizations that it took a good 90 days.
Wow.
And some of them even potentially a little bit longer if you've got, systems that are built in up to 6 months and 12 months for different check-ins. And so, I look at it in terms of what is a reasonable amount of time for you to really be up to speed within that company.
That's a really great question. As you all are thinking about your current organization, curious if that same question got your wheels turning, what does it look like to be successful in your organization from an onboarding perspective, to be onboarded fully in that organization? I love that. All right. So yesterday I hopped on Instagram stories and I asked everyone to share their worst onboarding experience. And I would love to hear, Craig, maybe the worst onboarding experience you've ever had.
Okay. So it was my first job, fresh out of school, and it was overseas. But it was with Americans overseas in Europe. And I showed up. They asked me to come before Christmas. My now wife and I were dating at the time. And so I went over there 2 weeks before Christmas started. There was going to be a big transition, and I was going to be taking over this role within an organization, and they were going to train me during that time. And I came into the office my first day, and they were like, well, everybody's going to be going on Christmas break for a month. I have about an hour to spend with you, and then we are leaving tomorrow to head back to the States. And so I was alone by myself in a brand new country with about an hour of onboarding in my new role. And the person that was supposed to be training me left the country the next day. That was my worst onboarding story.
That is terrible. We're going to dive into this a little bit later, but Craig, I'm curious how long you lasted at that company.
Longer than I should have. But it was, I finished out my commitment, which was about 6 months. And then there were some key changes that they were making. And so I ended up committing for another 2 years. But that's a story for another day.
Well, the story I shared on Instagram on our Leadr account yesterday was very kindly getting walked to my desk and then dropped off, and noticing there's no desk chair, and it's not a standing desk. So it's a little bit more of a hunch over situation. And I kindly leaned over to the person next to me in their little cubicle and said, hey, where do you think I could find a spare chair? They didn't offer to get up and walk me or tell me or go get it for me or find somebody that could. They told me to go downstairs and that there was a storage closet in the basement. And breaking into a locked storage closet to find your chair, found it empty. So they have empty locked storage closet. And Craig, you and I are going to dig into the quality of your onboarding experience usually correlates with the longevity of employment for that person.
That is true.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about it. What is the purpose of onboarding? Craig, is this just something where people get to know where the coffee is, how to clock in, clock out, and use the restroom throughout the day?
Definitely not. When you think about it, we invest a lot of time in the recruitment process, right? All of us have sat through interviews. If you actually are a part of the recruitment process overall within your organization, you know that a lot of thought is put into how do we find the right talent. Really, onboarding then is about how do we release that talent to be successful. So there are aspects of helping them really understand the culture of what you're trying to accomplish. There's a great book that came out years ago called Start With Why by Simon Sinek. It's helping them really understand and experience the why behind what you do, and then showing them the what and the how. It's not enough to just give a document. While that's a good thing to do, to have process documents and those pieces, but to actually spend time and walk people through how we do things here. Because my guess is your organization has some nuance and is kind of proud about the way that you like to do business. And so spending time early on with an employee to make sure that they fully understand who you are as a company, why you do what you do, and how they do that, and what that means for their specific role is really, really important.
Yeah, that is awesome. When we were doing some research in preparation for this, we found this heartbreaking statistic that only 12% of US employees say their company does a good job of onboarding. I mean, when you think through the companies you led, well, maybe not, Craig, you've led some incredible organizations. So let's not talk about those. Those are the anomaly. Let's talk about the other 78% of the companies that aren't doing a good job. Does this statistic surprise you?
No, not at all. And truthfully, even when you're a part of a great company, that statistic doesn't surprise me either, because the thing about processes is they're always in process. And so, today, even as we're talking about this, part of the reason you probably came onto this webinar overall is to really get maybe some insight or some encouragement or some help when it comes to some tips and tricks on how you can have a better employee onboarding process. But having any process at all is a good start. And so we're always going to be developing, and we're always going to be tweaking, we're always going to be better. And so, maybe we're not at 12%, maybe you feel like you're at 20%. That's a win. You've moved up 8%. So don't let this overwhelm you. We're all getting better at this. And I truthfully don't know one company that is at 100% employee retention. If we can get it up to that 70 to 80% range, you're doing pretty good, like exceptionally good.
Yes. So what I'm hearing you say is, if you joined this webinar today to learn about how to get better because you're feeling the pain points of it not being great, you're not alone, because everybody else is in the same boat as you. So Craig, here's where we get into the hot takes. When does onboarding start?
In my opinion, onboarding starts before you actually make the hire. Yeah. They should have a understanding, right, of your company, almost as if you are the guide, right? So if I'm recruiting an employee, even for us, in our case, it's fractional remote contractors. Even in that case, truthfully, the onboarding process starts during recruitment, and I am their guide through that entire process.
Yeah, exactly. When you start thinking about recruiting, I mean, you're communicating your brand, your culture, and how people are cared for and known during this process. That's typically what they're going to rely back on. Craig, when you think through some of your unique onboarding experiences, what are some of your favorite things that you've seen done, or maybe even heard done leading up? Let's start with from being hired to their first day.
So there are logistical things that take place within this. So one of my best experiences was where I actually had to move to take a role. And the moment we showed up in town, and I mean like pulled into town with our moving truck, there were people waiting for us at our apartment that were there to help us unpack our stuff. Now that to me is like over and above, but what does that say about the culture of that organization? That they would show up to somebody that they don't even really know, and help you move all your stuff in to your apartment. So that was one that was exceptional. But I think we can do simple things, right? So now we live in oftentimes a remote workplace or hybrid workplace. or we're not always moving full out communities every time we get onto a new job. Thinking through little touch points to be able to send a gift, a thank you card, a little gift basket, just something that says we appreciate you. And especially when they already have an understanding, maybe into some of the things that I like. So even just having a simple, fun questionnaire, you fill that out as a new employee, but the fascinating piece within that is you forget that you even fill that thing out. So when somebody sends me my favorite drink or a gift card to, one of my favorite stores, it really speaks to the fact that they pay attention to the little details, even though technically I filled out a form in my onboarding process. But it's remembering those little things, making people feel special, because onboarding is as much about the practical sides of things as it is about making people feel like they are valued, important, and special.
Oh, exactly. Here at Leadr, we actually send that welcome box that you were talking a little bit about. And when you fill out those secret forms, your correct t-shirt sizes in there. We don't just buy extra larges for everybody. So it's going to fit you on your first day, as well as your favorite snacks. Like you said, like having your favorite snacks available. And we've got like cool Leadr swag. You can see the blanket that's draped over my chair behind me. All of that kind of gets tucked in there to make you feel like you are part of the team. You are here. And we were in a hiring blitz when this great recession. We were hiring and trying to attack the best talent. So we started filming videos to say hello from team members, and we would send those to that person and just kind of blitz them throughout the few days before they joined the team. And they felt like they knew us and they had seen some faces, and that was really, really fun to get to do that. It's awesome. So when we talk about the first week, we've already talked about this a little bit, Craig, about how the pre-onboarding pieces really kind of set that tone for culture. Yep. But it also sets the tone for the longevity of how that employee is going to experience your company and what that looks like here. And we found the statistic that 70% of employees who had exceptional onboarding experiences say they have the best possible job. That is the quotes that they chose when it came to their onboarding experience. And that those employees were also 2.6 times, more than 2.5 times likely to be extremely satisfied with their workplace and consequently likely to stay longer. So what are some of those things that we can do? There are some necessary evils that we're going to dive into. How do you do that treacherous paperwork that HR is going to require that the government needs to know about for you? But what does it look like to possibly infuse your cultural norms to get everybody on the same page together, moving forward and laying the foundation for what that looks like? We've got a couple ideas. Now that the chat is working, I'd love to hear from some of you what that looks like. How do you infuse your company culture? Here at Leadr, that first full week, you're going to meet with every executive. And you're going to have the opportunity to get to hear from them, from their department, what it means. So if you're just on the product team and working in engineering, you're actually going to meet with the marketing team as well and get to hear what it means to understand the brand and representation of our company here at Leadr. Tell me a little bit more about this for you, Craig. What does that first few days, 3 weeks look like? Because you use Leadr for your onboarding process as well. Probably in a little unique way. And I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So we utilize Leadr not only for fractional employees or fractional contractors, but also for our customers. Because part of our value system and just the way that we operate as a company is we want to constantly help people develop and learn. And from a sales perspective, we're trying to strengthen their sales processes. So we want to make sure that from the very beginning, they are getting a consistent flow of, again, for us, it's remote. So a lot of this is based off of video or Zoom meetings or, random stuff like that. And we don't want to overwhelm contract employees with a bunch of unnecessary meetings. So it's spaced out over a length of time. But we want to make sure that they are that they have a steady flow of content and information that's helping them understand what we're trying to accomplish and giving them the tools to be able to do that themselves, right? So every contract employee that starts working with Altezza, they meet with me and we talk through what they want their development plan to look like. Now, we don't require that, but if they want to be held accountable, we then will, I'll sit down with them and create a system around that for what it looks like before they're placed into one of our customers.
That's awesome. So what I'm hearing you say is that not only do you focus on the brand, the culture of the company, but also the skill set required for them to be able to succeed in their role. I've worked at companies where it feels like you either get one really good or the other really good, like having both. And here at Leadr, our onboarding process, that first initial piece of it is about 2 weeks. You get the first full week all in who is Leadr, what are we doing? We're a people development software. So we are changing the market. We're literally transforming people management into people development. And that takes a little bit of time, even if you've chosen to work here, to understand and explain that people want to be led and developed, not managed. It's a new concept, but it's been not one for employees. It's just one that organizations are finally getting there to understand. So not only that, but you're also going to get on the second week, all the skills, all the training. How does the marketing team do this? How does the sales team do this? How do we communicate who we are? What does it look like for the systems and the processes and all those pieces? Leadr, we are a hybrid, remote, in-person. We've got all the things going on. And so for us, we make onboarding super fun, because when people think onboarding, they think maybe all day, heads down in the books and the computer, just boring. And here we've got tissue paper is super fun, tons of candy, and lots of party poppers to blow into as well. So what are some practical ways that people can infuse culture values during onboarding? I know you've talked about using Leadr for a little bit of that. For us, we use Leadr, and we upload all of our values into Leadr to be able to actually ask questions, engage, help them understand. And for us, we have a recap culture. So almost every meeting, you're required to send in a recap, or especially if you have a hard conversation or a one-on-one that needs to be recapped, all of that is here. So we're setting the tone early on for what it looks like for us. Craig, what is your favorite maybe video / learning thing that you send through Leadr to your team as a new hire that you're just excited for them to experience for themselves?
Well, so some of that for us is, right, we were talking about process earlier. Some of that is in process because as we've been building our business, we recognize that we actually have multiple points of onboarding that we have per employee. So the initial process is more about culture and instilling value. And so I mentioned this one earlier, but one of the videos that we send out to our team is the Simon Sinek Start With Why TED Talk. And I think that's just a super valuable resource. And one of the things that's really cool about the way that Leadr functions within the Learning tab is you can take videos or other resources that are meaningful to you that might not be done by your team and add those into some of your onboarding. So we have it tabbed for culture and values in the front end of just getting them used to what it means to be a part of the Altezza team. And then once they get placed into a customer, we have a whole new process that is a bunch of internal videos that we are creating a playlist for, that is, how do you be successful when you are a remote employee in somebody else's business? And so it's fun. It's been interesting, and Leadr's been a really helpful tool in that process.
Oh, that's awesome. You're in a very unique situation when it comes to your partnership with Leadr, because you're using it for your fractional employees, onboarding them, coaching them, training, all of ongoing, having those conversations. but you're also inviting your customers into Leadr as well and paying for them to use Leadr. So that way you can properly meet with them, have onboarding, and just the way that your business is structured, it works really well for you to partner both ways. And you've really invested financially and resources, time, energy to create all of those pieces to come together for a wonderful customer onboarding experience. Because if we believe that the employee onboarding experience maximizes the longevity of their time with us, it's probably going to be true on the customer side as well.
Yeah. And the same would be true. One of the things that we started to realize was in our business model, we would lose an engagement within the first 90 days. So any of the problems that were there for somebody to walk away from working with our business happened within the first 90 days because there's so many handoffs. They hire Altezza, and then we place a contract employee to actually handle their sales process. There's so many handoffs within that, that if we don't cover those gaps effectively and communicate what it means for that customer to effectively onboard a fractional employee into their business and not just treat them as a hired gun, but as a true member of their team, we just saw a lot of engagements dropping off and the success rate dropped significantly. And so the number one way for us to do that was then we heavily utilized the learning tab, was to create a whole series for us to start to begin to talk through how to effectively onboard a fractional remote employee. What should you expect from them? How do you make them feel like they're a member of the team without making them show up to 1,000 meetings because you only have them for 25 hours a month or 35 hours a month or 60 hours a month. So that was kind of one of the ways that we started to look at that. And then to be able to track through notes and, we had a bunch of different systems, but we're starting to get to the point to where we can start to look back on different meeting notes and decisions that were made and assignments that were given. And you can see whether or not those assignments were done or not. And so.
Oh, exactly. You can see right here still on our screen that this is my personal one. I took a screenshot of because it was all completed. So we're all green here, but you can see who's really invested in what's taking place. And I've been a part of organizations where they're not actually doing the onboarding process and they get let go during onboarding. Like, this is what we do here and how we do it. Craig, I love how intentional you all are with onboarding both employees and customers, because Altezza is doing a brand new thing as well. There's not a lot in this market space when it comes to hiring fractional sales employees to help business owners maximize their time and their energy and get the most out of their efforts when it comes to investing in their brand and bringing on new customers and finding some of those new customers even. So using Leadr for that is just, it's so cool to watch you all succeed and be able to be efficient in your efforts with that, and really helping not just spend more time with onboarding your customers because you're able to streamline some processes, but be able to reach more customers because of the efficiency you've had. For us at Leadr, we actually use our one-to-one meeting agenda with every new customer. That is how the onboarding process goes. And we send feedback, and it's so fun to log into their instance and be able to communicate with them as well. So before we dive into the necessary evil that is paperwork, Craig, any other thoughts on the fun, culture infusing side of onboarding?
No, I think, allow your personality to come through. Every company has a personality. Every organization has a personality, and allow those to shine through. Be fully who you are, and in all of your glory and not so glory.
I love it. No, let yourself be imperfect at the same time. And that really allows, when we're vulnerable, it allows a new employee to see that there's a space for them to contribute, to add to fill in the gap as well, when we are able to be transparent in that way. All right, we've talked about the fun stuff enough. When people think about onboarding, they typically think about this, the paperwork. But here's a distinct difference that we want to make. That paperwork is about compliance. onboarding is about culture. And there are things you have to do from a business standpoint, I mean, the government tells us you have to have these certain things, the I-9s, having the W-2s, if people want to get paid, what all of that looks like, even the systems and processes that you use. What if you were able to help set your employees up with all of their logins? What if they were bookmarked on their Google Chrome tabs already and they know how to get access and all those things? What if you have printed sheets out on their desk, or things that make it very usable for them to be able to easily set up? What if their email signature and picture was already like there and ready to go when they sign on their first day, so they don't feel like they're behind the 8 ball when it comes to acclimating themselves to what's taking place? Yeah, awesome. Well, we talked about that enough. I mean, there's nothing else to say about the paperwork piece, right? I mean, unless anybody in the chat's got something more, or they've got a tough question for us, and we can handle them. Craig and I are professionals, but we're going to move on from the paperwork piece, because this is the part you and I are really passionate about when it comes to onboarding, is that rhythm, that ongoing piece. And so for us, you and I, we've chatted about what does it look like to check in every 30 to 60 to 90 days, and not just leaving it at the first quarter, but what does it look like to check in, not from a skill set standpoint? Are they learning the job? Are they executing? Are they hitting the KPIs? Are they maximizing the work that is taking place? What about the culture? Are they understanding what it means to be a part of your unique culture there? Are they adding to it? Are they contributing to the processes? Are they moving the mission forward? And how do you do those pieces with throughout consistently? What does that look like? Tell us a little bit more about what Altezza does.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things to understand is the most valuable feedback that you can get from a new employee is going to happen within the first year. Once you're through year one, they're home blind, right? Like they have grown accustomed to the company to where their feedback, while still good and their insight still valuable, they're going to see holes and problems and even like positive aspects of your culture through fresh eyes in the first, especially 30, 60, 90 days. So part of that rhythm isn't just getting them up to speed. It's also getting consistent feedback. So when you think about your company values, right, and you're trying to instill those into your employees, part of our company value is we want to constantly be teachable. We want to be learning. And we recognized early on that valuable feedback happens from new employees, especially within the first year. So we want to be really intentional in those first 30 days to get real feedback, which also creates that transparency. In 60 days, get real feedback, 90 days to get real feedback from them about what's going well, where do they feel like they're hitting the mark, where do they feel like they're seeing gaps, not only in their role, but in the company overall. And so we want to open that up to be able to get that feedback, because I want to grow and learn and change and become a better leader. And the best way for me to do that is to even utilize and leverage the onboarding process with a new employee to make sure that we get the right feedback. But what I would say, again, ours is different because it's fractional, so we're not overloading. And again, it's in flux. Like if one of our employees is watching this webinar, you're like, you guys don't do like any of this stuff. Okay, true, but it's also changed since you went through it because we're constantly tweaking and changing it. So because we're trying to get better at everything that we do, we want to have a consistent touch point of when we're meeting with people. And so creating a meeting rhythm that puts it on the calendar, that you know you're going to have X amount of meetings, you're going to meet once a week, for the first 30 days, you're going to meet every other week for the next 60 days. And, you're going to start meeting once a month then for the next 90 days plus, and then building in that rhythm of what are you doing at 6 months? What are you doing at the 1 year anniversary? Not just from an employee review, but what critical feedback are you getting from them about what it means to be a part of the team? That is super important too. They're in it every single day. They have sometimes better insight than we do because they're in the weeds and in the day-to-day. And so onboarding isn't just about the employee, it's also about us as the employer.
I love your take. This, like, when I was thinking through what are some pain points that our customers are experiencing, our audience in general, that they care for their people, they want to develop their people, but what are some sticking points? Onboarding kept coming up over and over again. And I was like, Craig Johnson, he is my guy. You have so much wisdom to offer here. And it's so fun. I loved that you said that it's ever evolving and you called out your team. Like, I don't want to hear you belt shaking. Like, it's evolving, we're changing, we're going with it. You're actually contributing to the onboarding process. And it's funny because I think sometimes we forget like what happened and what didn't happen, like as we're continuing to grow and change and evolve, and what employees might have experienced what. And so recently I was on a call and someone was talking about, yeah, this is what I talk about in my productivity 101 during onboarding. And I was like, wait, what? Like productivity 101, like I want in, like, can you give an all hands talk on that? And they're like, oh yeah, we thought it might be actually really valuable if an experienced executive talks through best practices for email and project and task management, how to maximize your time so you're not having to work after dinner when you put the kids to bed. And I was like, yeah, I would have loved that. They're like, yeah, well, actually some of your feedback contributed to that. So thanks for that. So some other things, we have a brand guide now. So all new hires, they get equipped with a full PDF document of who we are, how to explain what you do when you're at a birthday party, or what is that 5-minute elevator speech when you're just like awkward and you're like, man, I got to go up to the 44th floor and I'm standing next to this person and they won't stop staring at me. So like, maybe I'll tell you about our company. So it's been really, really fun to help be a part of that. And I got to help speak into that brand partner guide that we have. Like, we want everyone to think that they're a partner of Leadr, and what does it look like to be a part of our brand. And so something I was passionate about happened obviously after I onboarded. And so now every new hire gets that because it was a miss I experienced, and opportunity to fill in the gap, just like you were talking about.
No, that's good.
All right, so let's talk about some of the tools and resources for a streamlined onboarding process. We have talked a lot about those videos, the training, some other ideas that you and I, we've chatted about. What if employees were partnered with a mentor? What if there was someone a few steps ahead of them, or even better, if you've got some leadership type employees, maybe not your executives, but maybe some directors that can actually mentor an entry-level person. I mean, what would that growth trajectory look like? Or how can you shorten some of that onboarding process by bringing somebody alongside every step of the way? So they're not just learning how to do the job with the tactical skills, but they're getting infused into your culture even quicker, feeling like they're a part of the team. Because what if that person, the mentor, is actually from a different team? And so now there's cross-pollination and maybe even some cross-training just by basic conversation of what happens. And what if you unlock some potential in that person that they didn't even know that was there because of what they've experienced, learned, heard? And hot take, Craig, I know you and I are really passionate about being able to be hybrid and work from home, but I think this next generation, they're going to miss out on some of those water cooler conversations, elbow rubbing with the fact that your CEO is going to share the same kitchen as you to heat up his lunch, where you just have that opportunity to say hello, get to know them. But some of those things are so important for a hybrid culture, how to infuse those, how to be intentional, how to maybe set up and tell them how to engage with Slack or Teams or whatever the communications tools that you're using. So that way everyone feels like they're a part of the team. I know, Craig, you guys are building an incredible culture. Not only are you helping your contract employees feel like they are part of the Altezza team, but also the company or multiple companies they are serving. And a lot of that comes down to your intentionality with those onboarding pieces that you talked about. Anything else you'd like to add here?
I think it's just good to address the immediate feelings that we have when it comes to a lot of these processes, because it's easy to have the mind game of, man, we have so far to go. but you're again, if you think about it in these terms, right? You're closer than you were yesterday, right? So you're not where you want to be. There's always a gap. There's a gap between where we are and where we want to be. There's always a gap. And so what we're talking about is how do you take one little click to move from where you are to where you want to be? And so, you know, even as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about all of the things that we're not doing well within our onboarding process. And I'm talking about onboarding processes.
Well, I love
so
you.
I know that as you're probably, you know, listening in on this webinar, you could be having those same mind games, just going, man, it's too far. How can we ever get to where we need? Just one step. Think about one thing that you can implement tomorrow, or one thing that you can implement this week that can start moving you from where you are to where you want to be. And so I know that's not like a practical, hey, but hopefully it'll help eliminate that anxiety level a little bit and just go, hey, one step closer today. You're good. You'll be okay.
Craig, is that why you picked up your pen to actually take the notes of the things you want to remember to go back and fix when we're done here?
I always have a pen. Yes, always.
I love it. Well, we have a ton of resources for you, and we don't want this list to feel overwhelming. There's so much to this. And so we're going to drop in the chat the ability to be able to download an ebook on the onboarding process that we've created here at Leadr to be able to share with you. But here's some really fun things that we've got going on in Leadr that help with the ongoing rhythms of what it looks like. From the learnings that Craig and we've talked about, those feedback pieces that we've talked about, you can see the different types of variabilities here, as well as insights, like truly, how are your people engaging and growing in your organization? What does it look like for them to maximize their role? How do they build rapport? Do they have clarity on what's expected of them? And we'll even be able to populate an employee net promoter score. And so my last question is, Craig, how do you know if it's working? Well, we've summarized a few of these pieces for you because we are coming up on time. So as you're thinking through what we didn't hit on, what questions you have, now is the time to start dropping those in here as Craig and I start to wrap up a few of these pieces. So how do you know it's working in the long term? Obviously, they're not leaving. You're keeping your employees, they're engaged, productivity is higher, you're growing as an organization because not only do people want to join your team, but you have customers that want to buy what you're doing. Because a lot of times we don't just buy things, we buy the people that we're talking to and the people that we know are behind it, the mission that they stand for and represent, and we buy authenticity. And so if our people reflect who we are and what we want, people are going to want more of that and we're going to grow. Short term, they're asking these are good questions that we can start asking themselves, but maybe they start asking you the good questions like Greg was talking about, like, you thought about this, or I'm noticing this here. What we mentioned was that manager's guide to the onboarding process, as well as seeking feedback from those new and existing employees. Craig, I'd love to hear your thoughts here on both short-term and long-term wins that people can feel like they're winning every step of the way.
You know, I think long-term, obviously higher retention and productivity. But I think a couple of other questions to ask within that. Are your employees more joyful? Do they enjoy coming to work more? And no, this is like the HR, how's morale? But like legitimately, are people enjoying what they do? I think employees that really value or that really feel valued and can really buy into the mission and values of an organization tend to be happier. People really care, or people really want to work hard when they're in an environment that they feel like they matter and that people care about them. And so one of the ways to start to gauge that within your process is, and I know it's squishy, right? How are people feeling as they are an employee? Not just, oh, they had a bad day, but like overall, are they excited to come into work? Or do you feel like it's a struggle to get people to want to show up to meetings? And, you know, different people bring down the entire tenor of a room. Sometimes that's speaking to other cultural issues that are going on. And while onboarding can't fix all of it, like a magic wand, it can be intentional to get it on the front end, to catch it before it really becomes a significant problem.
Absolutely. I love that you talked about that feeling piece, because it's not just those new employees, but what about the rest of the team? Do they feel like this person is contributing? Are they adding to the morale of the organization? And is your leadership team, is that person's manager having to work twice as hard to get them to get going, or are they pulling them along? That feeling piece of the entire team is a really great gauge. And it's not even something that we hit on yet. What does it look like for them to be onboarded onto that particular team, maybe even to that department? How do we help them feel like they are known, cared for, and for that team to feel like they can know and care for that person? I've got an idea, Craig, but I'd love to hear from you, from your experience, about the team component of onboarding.
Well, I definitely think each team needs to be intentional, because each team has different standards and operating principles, even within an organization. So that's part of what our function is right now, is we recognized there was a gap in the way that we onboarded a fractional employee, and then we weren't really effectively onboarding them into a customer, because it can be a few weeks or months even until somebody gets placed into the right customer. And so it's one thing to onboard them onto our team, but then they're just kind of sitting on the bench, and we haven't really had a lot of, we built more intentionality, and we're trying to build more intentionality on how do you engage an employee that is not yet fully engaged into an account yet. But then we realized the biggest gap was in how we onboarded them into that specific company. And that company has to speak into that onboarding process. While there are things that are going to be true of every single department, every single team within your organization, in some ways, Altezza operates as an extension of the companies that we serve, right? So our employee is white labeled as their employee. And so we realized that there were certain standards across the board that we had to cover, but that company has to speak directly into the onboarding process and recognize that they need to be just as intentional as we were in their onboarding process as well. Yeah. And so have your team start to think through what is unique about being a part of that team, and not in a silos perspective, but hey, every team's kind of got their like quirks and things that they bring to the table. Celebrate that, like show your quirkiness. Come on, development team, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I love that. So good. I'm gonna get distracted on thoughts there. That's so fun. Well, there's also one thing that you and I talked about, and that came down to what is it, maybe a one sentence, how do you win here job description? What does it look like for you to win every single day? And you had a really great thought. I know this isn't original to you. I'm not sure that there's anything original anymore these days, but sure, this is an incredible idea that I know you guys are really implementing well here.
Yeah, I actually stole this from Andy Stanley and North Point Church.
You probably stole it from somebody else. Yeah.
Right. Oh, totally. That's the way it works, right? But if you were to really summarize, and not, sometimes we can use like different like business language, like we dress things up, but in a very practical sense, what is the single summary, the single reason why somebody is being hired? So for me, I'm an operational leader, but I'm the director of operations for Altezza. I am a fractional employee for a fractional company. So think about that for a second. But the sentence that I developed for myself is just simply this: my role is here because I am supposed to establish and refine processes that build predictable success that scales. Right? So if I don't do anything else, like there's a lot of stuff that I have to do, but at the end of the day, my entire function is really about establishing and refining processes that help define predictable success as a company that scales as we grow. And so that's the way I know if that's my scoreboard. Am I being successful? Am I helping us establish predictable success that scales?
Wow.
Think about it. If somebody hasn't defined it for you, think about what it is. And for those of you that are in positions where you're recruiting for your company, start to think about one sentence job descriptions for your employees. It doesn't mean that that's the only responsibility they have, but at the end of the day, that's the thing that they're going to be judged for.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. It's so good. Well, great. You and I, we could chat all day, and we absolutely will chat all day for sure about this, but we've got some questions coming in. So I want to make sure that we take some time to do that. Callie is relying some of the questions that she's getting for us. So I'm going to start with hers. Any ideas on how we can make new team members feel more connected to the team during their onboarding process? Here at Leadr, we try to incorporate the fun pieces as well. And so they not only get to have onboarding lunch together with their little onboarding cohort, but they're also encouraged to have their team meet with them one day and have lunch with them. And there's so much for us. You're only onboarding about Leadr, and so you're not even with your team yet that first full week. And so having that mix of availability, we've brought in some really cool snacks, some favorite Dallas things, Texas sheet cakes, and just things to make it feel a little bit more Texas. Obviously, all the barbecue and Tex-Mex that you could possibly think of during that onboarding week. But I'd love to hear from you. What are some ways that maybe you can help people feel connected to each other during this onboarding process?
So it's specifically on-site, right? So, I do think, and this could feed into one of the other questions. I do think scheduling out their first 2 weeks, but doing it in a way that is not super overwhelming. So I know earlier, Karissa just kind of mentioned paperwork, as like just
over that.
block of just time suck, right? That sits there. But being intentional about the way that you schedule out their time, schedule out their first 2 weeks. And you mentioned something earlier about they have intentional time with all of the key lead team members of Leadr. I think scheduling out their time with specific teams, with specific leaders, with specific individuals for the first 2 weeks to get a larger exposure, and make that time not just about, hey, here's all of the information you need to know, but do we really value our employees to where we view their personal success as our company-wide success as well? They're hired for a job, they're hired for a role, totally get it. But an employee that believes that I have their best interest in heart and I am trying to help them achieve the deepest dreams and desires that they have, is going to be an employee that is going to make a significant difference in our company.
Absolutely. That kind of goes with a little bit of that battle of balancing teaching, helping someone get up and running as part of the team, not overwhelming with information, but if you walk them through what to expect so they know what's going to happen every step of the way, that probably does eliminate some of that fear of the overwhelming places that's going to take part, because it's kind of like first day of school. How nervous do our kids get when they are going to meet their teacher? I mean, they've met the teacher, they probably know a few friends, but walking to a new classroom, those new habits every single day looks different from them than the year before. And for us as grownups, that's really what it feels like. Can you tell Craig that we have young kids and that we're walking through a new school year for us? But that definitely kind of lowers the rung and helps them feel like they can be successful because this is already set up for them and they don't have to think about what's next or be uncertain or live in any sort of fear because of that. That is a great question. I have another great question here. Callie got one for us. What's your best advice for someone who was a not so good it's very kind, a not so good onboarding process currently? What is the best next step that they can take today?
That is a fantastic fantastic question, which speaks to the overwhelm, right?
Mhm.
So I think the best, and this is an opinion, I think the best next step that you can do is to step back and remember what it was like to be a first-time employee and go, what did I need that would have helped me be successful? And if you can start to define that, that's a great place to start.
Mhm.
What would I have liked to have had to be successful when I first was an employee here? And then from there, again, space it out, right? Pick one thing that you can implement and put timelines to it. In the same way that you schedule out their first couple of weeks with the onboarding process. And I think that speaks to department heads with busy schedules as well. Look, onboarding is everybody's role and everybody's job. And if we all want to be successful, then we all need to be bought into the onboarding process. Now, we can be sensitive to department heads and executives that have very busy schedules. And that might look like they might only have one, 30-minute block that they can utilize over the next 2 weeks. That's fine. Then pre-schedule it and get it, pre-schedule it and get it in. But really start to think about what would I have liked to have had when I was first an employee, because the odds are you didn't have those things. What did I need? And then what's just one thing that you can start with and put the other stuff down the road, implement that one thing, then go to the next thing, then go to the next thing. But the first thing I would do is sit back and think about it. What do I wish I would have had when I first started at this company?
Such a good question, Craig. And as a reminder, like you and I both talked, this is an evolving process. Like your onboarding process should be changing and growing with you as an organization. And what worked when you're starting out trying to hit that first million in revenue isn't going to work when you hit that the next 10 million in revenue. So you've got to be evolving and ever changing. And so this is probably a question that everybody should be asking themselves every step of the way. What is something that you wish you had when you first started, knowing what you know now, even as your company continues to scale? All right, we've got one last question here before we wrap up. All right, the paperwork part's inevitable. What tools have you found to be useful when it comes to onboarding here?
Another great question. I think tech stack is super important. I am not an HR person and I am not a finance person. So it would be important to know that right off the bat. At my core, I'm an entrepreneur. Like, what can I say? So I'm used to bootstrapping. I think there are a lot of really great tools out there, but I would lean heavily on key experts within those specific fields. So understanding, it's okay to understand what the requirements are, but if you're in finance, stay in your lane and let somebody that, or if you're not in finance, stay in your lane and let somebody that understands finance handle the compliance side of the financial pieces. Whatever HR software or whatever financial software you use for payroll, whether, whatever that could be, QuickBooks, Gusto, whatever you're utilizing, a lot of those tools have checklists that you can then just create, or simple checklists in whatever your tech stack looks like. That helps you remember when a new employee comes on for finance, here are the 5 things that I need from them. For HR, I need to get a background check. So I think you can do it with simple checklists. As your company grows, invest in some tools that are going to actually help you with that. But you can be low tech initially, but just have other people own that. One person should not own every aspect of the onboarding process. Stay in your lane. And if you need to be the person that holds everybody else accountable, do that. But finance should handle financial compliance. HR should handle HR compliance. You should handle, if somebody needs to hold everybody accountable and that's your role, then you make sure everybody else is doing the things that they need to be able to do. So whatever, I know that didn't totally answer the question from a tech stack perspective, but hopefully that helped bring it back a little bit from an accountability perspective.
Absolutely. I think that's great to stay in your lane, seek expertise where needed, rely on other people, and invest in those pieces that are going to help you do the best thing instead of maybe trying to piecemeal it together to just get by. Because if you're growing like you hope you're going to grow, you're going to outgrow those systems. So buying the best in class right away is the most important. And soft pitch here, Leadr is your one-stop shop for people. And so we are a full HRIS suite. We're able to offer not only that leadership development piece that people have come to know and love about us as a brand, but also core HR, payroll, benefits administration, health plans as well. All right. We are right at time. My goodness, this hour flew by so fast with you, Craig. Tell us a little bit about how to get in contact with you, who should be getting in contact with you, both as a potential fractional employee and a customer looking for someone to come fill in those shoes and the gaps that they have on the sales team, because Altezza helps you accelerate your sales.
Sure. So one, if you are a sales professional and you've got some experience and you are looking to diversify your streams of income, let's chat. There's no pressure on that. You can shoot me an email or go to our website and fill out a little online application, altezzasolutions.com. And it's really low pressure. We just have conversations to see if it's a fit. And then two, if you are a solopreneur, entrepreneur, team of entrepreneurs, if you are a business owner or leader that has been doing sales by default, not design, like it's just something you've had to do, but it's not something that you love to do, we can help you with that. So let's chat about that as well. And you can just shoot me an email, which is on the screen there. So Karissa, thanks for allowing me to be a part of this. This is really fun.
Oh goodness. Well, thank you, Craig. I can't wait for our next one. I would love to have you guys shoot us some emails, maybe connect with us on social media as well, and tell us what you want to hear from Craig and I next when I invite you back. I'm actually really curious what they want to hear from you again, Craig. So until next time, everyone, we will be back next Thursday afternoon with our next partner. We're going to talk about the emerging leader and those that lead them. And it's a brand new book that is coming out by our one and only partner, Adam Parno. We can't wait. All right, everyone. See you next week. Thank you.
See you, everybody.